Well folks, buckle up because it's happening again. The age-old rivalry between the United States and Canada has flared up once more, and this time, it's over something that might seem all too familiar. Yes, we're talking about tariffs. But not just any tariffs. Tariffs on steel and aluminum. If you thought the trade disputes of the past were behind us, think again. This latest spat is a throwback to the days when trade wars dominated the headlines. Just when you thought things couldn't get any weirder, here we are, witnessing another chapter in the ongoing saga of US-Canada relations. It's almost like a soap opera, with twists and turns that keep everyone on the edge of their seats. The stakes are high, and the drama is real. People on the streets are talking, trying to make sense of it all. How did we get here again? The US and Canada are back at each other's throats, and the flags are waving as if to remind us of the national pride at stake. This isn't just about economics, it's about identity, sovereignty, and the age-old question of who gets to call the shots. The protests are heating up and the rhetoric is getting sharper. It's a clash of titans, and neither side is willing to back down. This time, it's all about tariffs on steel and aluminum. Remember those, right? The very materials that are the backbone of our industries. The stuff that builds our cars, our buildings, and our infrastructure. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the impact is felt across the board. From the factories to the construction sites, everyone is bracing for the fallout. It's like a greatest hits album of Trump-era trade disputes, only this time it's 2025, and we're all supposed to act surprised. The echoes of the past are loud and clear, and the memories of those turbulent times are still fresh. The signs, the slogans, the protests, they all feel like déjà vu. But this isn't just a rerun, it's a new episode with higher stakes and more at risk. Only this time it's 2025 and we're all supposed to act surprised. The news is spreading like wildfire and people are glued to their phones trying to keep up with the latest developments. The reactions are mixed, some are shocked, others are resigned, and many are just plain confused. How did we end up here again? It's a question on everyone's mind. President Trump, in a move that shocked absolutely no one, announced a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum imports. It was a bold move, but not an unexpected one. After all, Trump has never been one to shy away from controversy or confrontation. His supporters cheered while his critics groaned. The announcement was met with a mix of applause and outrage, and the stage was set for another round of trade tensions. He initially tried to jack it up to 50%, but then backpedaled faster than a squirrel in traffic. It was a classic Trump maneuver: go big, then scale back just enough to keep everyone guessing. The initial shock gave way to a sense of relief, but the underlying tensions remained. The question on everyone's mind was, why the sudden change of heart? What prompted Trump to pull back at the last minute? Why the sudden change of heart? Was it pressure from his advisors, a strategic move, or something else entirely? The speculation was rampant, and the answers were elusive. Politicians and pundits alike were scrambling to make sense of it all, and the public was left in a state of bewilderment. The plot thickened, and the drama continued to unfold. Well, it turns out Ontario, the Canadian province that's been a thorn in Trump's side, decided to play nice, at least for now. The province, known for its strong stance on trade issues, made a surprising move to de-escalate the situation. It was a calculated risk, but one that seemed to pay off, at least in the short term. The question was, how long would this newfound cooperation last? This whole thing started because Ontario decided to slap a 25% surcharge on US electricity exports. It was a bold move, one that caught everyone off guard. The surcharge was a direct response to US tariffs, and it set off a chain reaction that led to the current standoff. The power dynamics were shifting, and the stakes were getting higher by the day. Trump, never one to back down from a trade war, especially with our neighbors to the north, retaliated with tariffs. It was a tit-for-tat response, a classic case of escalation. The rhetoric was heating up, and the tensions were palpable. The border, once a symbol of friendship and cooperation, was now a flashpoint for conflict. The protests were growing, and the stakes were getting higher. It's enough to make your head spin, and we're just getting started. The twists and turns of this trade dispute are far from over, and the impact is being felt on both sides of the border. As the drama continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the US and Canada are back at it again, and the world is watching. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. Now you might be wondering, why all the fuss over some electricity and metal? Well, the story is more complex than it appears on the surface. It's not just about the electricity surcharge in Ontario, or the steel tariffs imposed by the US government. It's about the intricate web of international trade, political posturing, and economic strategies that affect millions of lives on both sides of the border. Well, for starters, Trump hates losing, especially when it comes to trade. His entire political persona is built around the idea of winning, of making America great again by outmaneuvering other countries in the global marketplace. To him, trade deficits are a sign of weakness, a symbol that America is being taken advantage of by its trading partners. He sees Ontario's electricity surcharge as a personal affront, an attack on American jobs and American greatness. This surcharge, which increases the cost of manufacturing in Ontario, indirectly affects American companies that rely on Canadian imports. Trump interprets this as an unfair advantage, a way for Canada to undermine American industry. And when Trump feels attacked, he lashes out, tariffs blazing. His response is almost instinctual, a knee-jerk reaction to what he perceives as economic aggression. By imposing tariffs, he aims to level the playing field, to force other countries to play by what he considers fair rules. Of course, Trump being Trump, he couldn't just leave it at that. He had to make it a spectacle, a show of strength and defiance. His rallies became platforms for airing grievances, for rallying his base around the idea of economic nationalism. He painted a picture of a beleaguered America, beset on all sides by unfair trade practices and predatory countries. He had to throw in some of his signature rhetoric, calling for Canada to become the 51st state, because apparently, the only way to solve a trade dispute is to absorb the other country into your own. This was, of course, hyperbole, but it served its purpose. It got people talking, it stirred emotions, and it reinforced his image as a leader who would go to any lengths to protect American interests. He even threatened to slap tariffs on Canadian auto imports because nothing says let's be friends like crippling a key industry in your supposed allies' economy. The auto industry is a significant part of both the American and Canadian economies, and such a move would have far-reaching consequences. It was a high-stakes game of economic brinkmanship, with real jobs and livelihoods hanging in the balance. But beneath all the bluster and bravado, there's a method to Trump's madness. He genuinely believes that tariffs are good for America, that they bring back jobs and make the country stronger. This belief is rooted in a particular economic philosophy, one that prioritizes domestic production and views trade deficits as inherently harmful. He points to the decline of manufacturing in the U.S. and blames it on unfair trade deals and countries like Canada taking advantage of America's good graces. In his view, the loss of manufacturing jobs is not just an economic issue, but a moral one. It's about fairness, about ensuring that American workers are not left behind in the global economy. He points to the decline of manufacturing in the U.S. and blames it on unfair trade deals and countries like Canada taking advantage of America's good graces. In his view, the loss of manufacturing jobs is not just an economic issue, but a moral one. It's about fairness, about ensuring that American workers are not left behind in the global economy. This narrative resonates with many Americans who have seen their communities hollowed out by factory closures and job losses. It taps into a deep-seated sense of injustice and a desire for a return to a time when American industry was the envy of the world. So, how did Ontario respond to all this tariff talk? Well, they basically blinked. The province, known for its robust economy and significant contributions to the Canadian GDP, found itself in a precarious position. The tariffs imposed by the U.S. were not just a minor inconvenience, they had the potential to disrupt entire industries from manufacturing to agriculture. Premier Doug Ford, the man in charge of Ontario, decided to hit the pause button on that electricity surcharge after a little chat with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. This move was not just a simple administrative decision, it was a strategic pause, a moment to reassess and recalibrate Ontario's approach to the escalating trade tensions. It seems like someone in Canada finally realized that poking the bear with a stick wasn't the best strategy. The realization dawned that a more diplomatic approach might yield better results. After all, the relationship between Canada and the U.S. is not just about trade, it's about shared values, mutual respect, and a long history of cooperation. But it's not like Ford completely caved to Trump's demands. He made it clear that while Ontario was willing to negotiate, it would not do so from a position of weakness. Ford's stance was firm. Ontario would protect its interests, but it would also seek a path of dialogue and mutual understanding. He's still planning to meet with Lutnick in Washington to talk about trade and maybe even try to hammer out a new trade deal. This meeting is more than just a formality. It's an opportunity to address the underlying issues and find a sustainable solution. The stakes are high, and both sides know that a prolonged dispute would be detrimental. Because let's face it, the old one isn't exactly working out so well, is it? The existing trade agreements have shown their limitations, and the economic landscape has changed significantly. New challenges require new solutions, and this meeting could be the first step towards a more balanced and fair trade relationship. Ford's trying to walk a fine line here. On one hand, he needs to show strength and resilience to his constituents, proving that Ontario will not be bullied. On the other hand, he must also demonstrate a willingness to engage in constructive dialogue, to find common ground and avoid unnecessary conflict. He doesn't want to look weak in the face of American pressure, but he also doesn't want to start a full-blown trade war. The consequences of such a conflict would be far-reaching, affecting not just the economy but also the social and political fabric of both nations. Ford's challenge is to navigate these turbulent waters with wisdom and foresight. He knows that Ontario's economy is deeply intertwined with the US, and a prolonged trade dispute would hurt everyone involved. The interconnectedness of the two economies means that any disruption would have a ripple effect, impacting businesses, workers, and consumers on both sides of the border. Ford's goal is to find a solution that minimizes harm and maximizes benefits for all parties involved. In Section 4, Market Jitters, the Dow takes a dive. Now, whenever there's even a whiff of a trade war in the air, the stock market tends to freak out. And this time was no different. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, that bellwether of American economic confidence, took a nosedive, plummeting over 500 points after Trump's tariff announcement. It's almost like investors don't have much faith in Trump's ability to negotiate a trade deal without sending the global economy into a tailspin. Of course, the White House was quick to downplay the market's reaction, calling it a temporary blip and insisting that everything's fine. But the truth is, this whole tariff tango has injected a healthy dose of uncertainty into the markets. Businesses hate uncertainty, and when businesses get nervous, they tend to hold back on investment and hiring. Section 5, Canadian Backlash, Trudeau, and the Boycott Movement. Over in Canada, the reaction to Trump's tariff threats was about as subtle as a moose in a china shop. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's had to endure more than his fair share of Trump's antics over the years, accused the US president of trying to weaken Canada for some sort of hostile takeover. Trudeau's not wrong to be suspicious. Trump's made it abundantly clear that he doesn't see much value in traditional alliances or diplomatic norms. He's all about America first, and if that means throwing Canada under the bus to score a few political points, so be it. And it's not just the politicians who are upset. Ordinary Canadians are fuming, and they're channeling their anger into a familiar outlet: boycotts. Social media is buzzing with calls to boycott American goods, from Coca-Cola to Levi's jeans. It's a tactic that's been tried before with varying degrees of success.